Castle Goring from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, well, well. We are going to start off today with giving you a taste of what it's like to be in the Royal Enclosure and some of the people that one runs across in the Royal Enclosure. I suspect you're not going to get this morsel anywhere else, and I think it would be very mean of me to not serve it up for your delectation. So here goes. First of all, I'm speaking about Tuesday, the first day of Royal Ascot, which of course I attended. And the King and Queen were there. She looked wonderful in a royal blue dress and hat, to those of you who haven't seen what she wore. He looked his customarily stylish self, because he rarely dresses very well and always has, as indeed did his great uncle, King Edward VIII. He really has that dapper look from his great uncle. Princess Anne was very typically Princess Anne, and I was delighted to see that beside her, to her left, if I remember correctly, I think I do, was the absolutely lovely Ella Kingston, better known, I suspect, as Lady Gabriella Windsor, now Lady Gabriella Kingston. She is so nice, and she is so beautiful, and she is so impeccable. She is so everything. She really is in the fine tradition of her aunt Alexandra. She also has the style of her aunt Alexandra. Her mother, Princess Michael, is of course very stylish as well, but rather more extravagant. Prince Michael is very stylish as well, if you like his style. I certainly did before he had a beard, but we're not going to go there. And she looked so beautiful. And it's nice to see everybody rallying around her, and that she is responding to the care that has been given to her. I'm not going to belabor the point, because aside from anything else, I would not wish to tread on her very lovely and gentle toes. She is a really, really lovely person. And I know this not only from friends of mine, but from my butler, who used to be a member of their staff. And he has, staff will give you, and incidentally, he never gossips, and I would never encourage him to gossip, but he sings Ella's praises. And when you get it from not only friends, but staff, So, okay. Well, the first picture I am going to show you is Princess Anne presenting the winner of the Coventry Stakes, which is owned by the Manton Syndicate, of whom friends of mine are a part of. And there is a very nice picture of Princess Anne with John Kennedy, and I think his name is Ben, if I remember correctly, Sangster, whose father is the one who took over Manton after my old chum John Bloomfield sold it. I think it would have been in the 80s. John was married to Polly Williams, who then married Nigel Havers, and we're not going to be too, well, we're going to draw a veil over the fact that Nigel Havers then sued for his widower's share of Polly's money, which came from John Bloomfield, and she left to her children with John Bloomfield. So that's Manton. But anyway, it's a very nice picture, and I'm also going to show a little snippet of a bit of a tape, which gives you a flavour of Princess Anne's interaction with people and a taste of her personality, because she's very colourful and she's very down to earth. So there'll be that. And then we'll post a photograph of my son and me taken in car park number 1 with the race track in the background. Then I went up to what is one of the chicest boxes to be asked to. It is organised by Thierry Mackay, who is Mauritian, French, British. He's the heir to a French viscountcy, but the family has been in Mauritius for many years. And he organises every year the most wonderful luncheon party and then tea party with our host, whose name is Sanjeev Ramdani, who is a very, very grand Mauritian. And various members of his family were there. So I'm going to get a picture of them posted. Then, to give you a taste of some of the guests, regrettably, I ended up in practically all of them. Sorry. We will post one of me with Isabelle Christiansen, who is gloriously beautiful. I've known Isabelle since the mid-80s, and she looks exactly the same. And she's not had any plastic surgery. Is that not amazing? She is absolutely beautiful, very Danish couturier, very well known. She has a shop on Beauchamp Place. I think she also has a place in Monaco, and I suspect she has a foot in the New York camp as well. She was there with her son, and there's a nice picture of us that was taken of us together, so I'll post that. And of course, no posting would be complete without Princess Olga Romanov. So we'll post one of Olga with Marina Lobanov-Rostovsky, who is Princess Dmitry Lobanov-Rostovsky, and me. and then one with Prince Dmitry Lobanov-Rostovsky. And me. And if there are any others, I just bung them in after this. Okay? So hopefully that will give you something of a taste and flavour of what Royal Ascot is truly like. And without further ado, I will now plunge in with what Magpie says. Because, of course, there was lots of, shall we say, talk about what's going on behind the scenes, generally. So, not particularly in our crowd, incidentally, but just generally. Magpie says, it took me a solid, because of course, may I say it, interject, that there is tremendous admiration as well as support, not only for Ella Kingston, but also for Catherine Wales. People are filled with admiration for her grace and dignity, which also Ella, it has to be said, has in spades. And the fact that she made the effort to show her face at trooping the colour and looked so wonderful. There's little doubt that you look wonderful one day and the following day you feel dreadful. So I'm going to read out what Magpie says because this hits bullseye. It took me a solid 2 years to go through my operation, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and then injections after. Maybe longer. I didn't return to work because I was reaching retirement age, though I'd always planned to work longer in my beloved career. Cancer knocked the stuffing out of me. It's been 5 years since treatment finished, and I'm still far from my former fitness. Catherine is younger, but has the same grueling experience. Catherine should be allowed time and peace. The bullying is a disgrace, and in my opinion, can only come from the Sussex camps. Big exclamation marks. The has-beens, sorry, could have stopped this by publicly denouncing the disgusting behaviour from their supporters, by publicly showering their love and support to Catherine. But they've remained silent, and that says it all about their mean characters. We know bullies, and the mean girls are the worst of the bullies. Mean, spiteful, and wicked, in my opinion. Well, I have to say, I have come across very few people of any complexion or rank who have a good word to say about Meghan and, to a lesser extent, Harry. And yes, Catherine is doing as well as she can, and she is mending as quickly as she can. But, you know, when you're ill, you have good days and you have bad days. So, and to put it in a more personal way, I mean, this is one of the busiest weeks of the year for me. I have so much going on at all times. I mean, today I have a picnic for God knows how many people. I never know exactly how many people. But every Ladies' Day I have a picnic in my car park spot in car park number 1. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of organization. And of course, I have not been A1 either. And I have all my other commitments that have to be honored. And I get so if I'm, say, 0.05% off, Catherine is 9.5% off. So I should really say 9.5 out of 10% off. Out of 10. I'm sorry. You see, I'm really, really not completely myself, as I have been told I wouldn't be, because after a head injury, you evidently sort of scramble things for a week or two. And also it affects your energy levels. And this is my little nonsense. So people are filled with admiration for Catherine and also filled with admiration for Ella, because she really is grace and courage and dignity and beauty all rolled into one. Lovely, lovely girl. So, Harry and Meghan, I think we should flush them. Kate Sleuth says, Dear Lady C, what do you think of the latest bombshell in Star magazine that King Charles has pancreatic cancer and has 2 years to live? This is shockingly slanderous. Question 2. The same article goes at length to blame King Charles for Harry's current unhappiness. Sorry for laughing. Do you think Meghan wrote this article to groom the public and remove herself from any blame for Harry's state? Well, Kate Sleuth, that's actually a very sharp and shrewd question for you to have asked. Because Meghan goes out of her way to make sure that Harry carries the can, and she isn't even around for any water to spill in her direction. Yes, there have been rumours going around about the king and his condition, and I think the less said about them, the better. He was on fine form. He obviously is still being treated, but the mere fact he is as functional as he is in public, surrounded by so many people, should tell you something. His treatment, he is responsive to his treatment in a positive way. And I am not going to get sucked into all of the untoward speculation that is emanating from the Californian camps with regard to Charles and Catherine's health. And to blame Charles for Harry's current unhappiness is a bit of a joke. I think what's more to blame is Doria, superb weed. Ayahuasca, 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 ayahuasca. My nose runs, you see. It runs even more than my common sense. I think we can safely assume that Harry's drama is a manifestation of his histrionic streak and his folly exaggeration of it, gratis Meghan and her histrionic streak. I'm a proud, confident woman of colour, and I'm just the best thing that ever happened. And sliced bread doesn't even begin to compare with how wonderful I am. And, I was the star of Suits. Yes, I was. The whole histrionic aspect of their demeanour is very indicative of seriously disordered personalities in operation in full view of the whole of the world. So, of course she's going to absolve herself of any blame for Harry's misconduct and her own. But you notice, not once so far has either of them distanced themselves from the vicious, venomous, and quite frankly now ludicrous speculation with regards to his father and his sister-in-law's health. And I've got raspberry jam and I'm going to blow you a raspberry. Am I not hot? I can tell you something. If you really want to know how to make it in the world, you should follow my manual. I know all about climbing ladders. Yes, I do. Luxie says, Lady C, thank you for your wonderful channel. Thank you for thinking it's wonderful. Your hard work and research are greatly appreciated. Thank you for that. Would you please tell us what Harry was like in his younger years? I know Harry was one of the most popular royals. However, I find it difficult to believe that his current behaviour is all due to Meghan's influence. I strongly believe that the Harry we see is the true Harry. I also feel that his behaviour mimics that of Diana's, that King Charles and the rest of the royal family had to deal with behind closed doors. I feel that the palace made Harry look good to the public because of who he is. I feel that we are seeing the real Harry. Well, Luxie, I think you're right up to a point, and I think beyond the point, let's give credit where it's due. What we are seeing is Harry with his failings and his paranoia and his self-pitying, self-important nonsense, blown out of all proportion by the ministrations of his wife. Just because, I'm going to make it an extreme analogy. Many people have the potential to be extremely destructive, but they're not, because they have a super ego, they have values, they have principles, they have a conscience, they have a code of conduct that prevents them from indulging their more destructive sides. Let me use a small example that has nothing to do with Harry. Somebody who is extremely envious and covetous, but moral, might want to steal from other people, but who won't because of his or her moral code and the knowledge that stealing is wrong. If they then get involved with somebody who is a born shyster and crook, who then encourages them to steal and say, oh, it's okay, why shouldn't you have what everybody else has? And provides justification for the conduct that overrides their superego, their conscience, their moral side. So indulges their id in Freudian terms, the nasty, chaotic, unconscious element that every personality possesses. So would you say that that was the real person? It certainly is the real person at the time that things untoward are taking place. But would that be the real person if that individual had not succumbed to the ministrations of an amoral individual undermining his or her moral structure? I would submit no. And one of the virtues of a 12-step program is that 12-step programs account for the fact that people who are on drugs and drink is a drug, they lose their moral compass. They not only the drug itself or the drink itself lessens their inhibitions, but usually so does the company they keep, which is usually equally detrimental to constructive conduct. And in the 12-step program, there is the recognition that addiction is not only a physical disease, but it is also a spiritual disease, meaning that they have succumbed to the destructive, to the bad, and they now need to replace that destructiveness with constructiveness and replace the bad and the bad habits that they have learned with good habits and good thought processes, because they have been suffering from what is called stinking thinking, and they need their brains cleansed, or their minds would be a better word, although it's brains as well, because, if you mimic being unhappy, you become unhappy. If you mimic being dishonest, you stand a far better chance of being dishonest. And if you succumb to dishonesty, you are perfecting the art of dishonesty, as opposed to enhancing the art of honesty. So I would answer the question in that way. What we're seeing is Harry distorted by bad influence and justifying it on the basis of the fact that this one did this, that one did that, blah, 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 da, 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 as if he is the only person in the world who has ever had any issues to have to deal with, both in reality and within his family, when in fact he should be counting his blessings because he's one of the most privileged human beings on earth. And I'm afraid a hard luck story and a candidate for sympathy when you are one of the most privileged human beings on earth is a real stretch for anybody to actually absorb and accommodate, except an imbecile. And there are plenty of those around, especially amongst their supporters, because they're not interested in the morals of the situation. They're not interested in the rights and wrongs. They are interested in, oh, look how poor Harry and Meghan, it makes me feel better about my sad lot, instead of getting off their backsides and improving their lots with hard work and initiative and proper moral structure. Sparkle Shampoo says, hello. Have you heard any rumblings about King Charles making Zara Tyndall a princess? Please let it be so. Imagine how that would stick it to those two grifters. Love to you and your fur babies. No, I haven't heard of any such thing. I know that there are all sorts of people making all sorts of speculative suppositions. They, insofar as I understand it, and I qualify this by saying, I think it would be very nice if Zara and Peter Phillips were given hereditary royal rank as a result of being Princess Anne's children, and encouraged to help out more than they do. I think that would be a very good thing. I also think in this modern day and age, it would actually be a positive if husbands of inferior rank assumed the superior rank of their wives when the wives had a superior rank. In Spain and Portugal, it's done and has always been done, with the result that the husband of a queen who was just a prince was known as a king. And for instance, the Duchess of Alba's husbands were the Dukes of Alba. So I think that would be one way of leavening the loaf, so to speak. But I think the thinking in royal circles is that the fewer titles there are, the better. That it makes it rarer for those who have a title to retain the title. So it makes them rarer and therefore more special as a result of their rarity value. And B, it is in keeping with the zeitgeist of the times. So instead of aristocratizing and royalizing people without titles, those without titles are perceived by the public as being royal and being members of the royal family, although technically they're not. The last person who decided to royalize his descendants was King Edward VII, who made the Princess Royal of the days two daughters who were ladies, Lady Alexandra Duff and Lady Maud Duff. He made them princesses. And when Edward VII's son acceded to the throne, he made it known to his cousin, Princess Maud, that she was not to use her royal title. She was to be known by her married name as Lady Southesk. She was the Countess of Southesk. Her elder sister, Alexandra, was Princess Arthur of Connaught, so she had a royal title by virtue of marriage to a royal prince. But the point I'm making is that this is over 100 years ago now, that Edward VII royalized them, and his son George V de-royalized the one who was born a lady as opposed to a princess. I think the thinking was, the fewer royals that there are, of the fewer calls on the privy purse, and the more likely it was to retain public support for the royal family generally. Of course, in those days, the royal family was much, much bigger than it is now. My own personal preference would be to see Peter and Zara given through their mother a royal rank, Edward and Sophie's children who have royal rank be acknowledged as such, and have all of them supplementing the show, so to speak. So I hope that answers the question. Susan Harris says, you answered a question regarding the legitimacy of Harry's title and if he truly was born of Di and Charles. I am really curious about Lily and Archie and the legitimacy of their titles if found true that they were born of a surrogate. The way it stands, they seem to have been titled as if they were born according to royal standards or law. I did find it odd that the titles were never officially announced by the king, but instead announced via People magazine, Meghan, a few days prior to the coronation. I assume she was desperate for the attention since she was not asked to be a part of the ceremony. Then the palace quietly updated the titles on the website. Can you clear this up, please? Well, Susan Harris, Archie and Lilibet have the rank of prince and princess as a result of having been declared by their father to be the legitimate progeny of him and his wife. That is why they have any entitlement whatsoever to royal status. If they were the product of a declared surrogacy, and funny enough, incidentally, at Ascot, everybody was singing the praises of Princess Benedict of Denmark's son and daughter-in-law, and how wonderful their son and daughter who were born of surrogates are, and what a happy thing the whole thing is, and how beautifully handled it has been. So I just interject that little point for what it's worth. Harry and Meghan's declared children have been declared to have been legitimately produced, and if they were not legitimately produced and declared to be the product of a surrogacy, they would now be Lord Archie Windsor and Lady Lilibet Windsor. They would not be Prince and Princess. It's all a matter of declaration. And if you stop to think, there is a process for declaring births in this country that pretty much everybody follows. And there has never been a situation like this before, where the legitimacy of heirs to the throne were called into question the way these two children's legitimacy and rights to the throne have been called into question, to a large extent as a result of their mother's conduct especially, but also the declarations that their father has made on television and in his memoir. And as the late Queen said, recollections do vary. And remember, Harry's recollections are not exactly sound at all times. For instance, he clearly remembers the moment that his master at Eton came into the room and Uriah Heep-like said, "Oh, your Royal Highness," as the sun was streaming in through the window, and dappled the desk. One puff of the spliff at a time. And told him that his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, had died. Except in reality, Harry and William and their father were in cloisters when Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, died. But Harry has a very clear memory of something that didn't happen. So I think this is a situation that really it would be in the interests of all parties for it to be cleared up. The fact that it's not being cleared up is eloquent. And we will now go to what Mershtam Gal says. I am listening to an audio book by Professor Arnold Einstein. He analyzes the Daniel Defoe novel Moll Flanders. I was walking, but stopped in my tracks. She must be Methane's role model. The similarities are amazing. Have you read the book? Jen, kisses. I read Moll Flanders maybe 60 years ago. If I recall, there was also a movie made of it. And unless I'm mistaken, Kim Novak played Moll Flanders. Then there was a television thing done on Moll Flanders. But I've read the book so long ago, I'm afraid I don't really remember it in any detail. But what I will say is, very positive characters have uniquely differentiating attributes that less positive characters lack. The more untoward and detrimental and self-indulgent and destructive and troubling or troubled a character is the more uniformity he or she possesses with other caricatures, because illness is a caricature of health. It is a narrowing down of the spectrum, the wide spectrum that good health allows. So, on that note, I will end with what Jane Smith says. Great video. Can you explain what happened with the Marchioness of Londonderry and her affair with Georgie Fame? It must have been a dreadful scandal to find the heir was not entitled to the viscountcy. What became of the child who was revealed to be the child of Georgie Fame? Well, as I recall, when the baby was about 18 months old, his legitimacy was called into question, and he was de-viscountized because up to then he was Viscount Castlereagh. And the whole thing was a huge scandal at the time. And Nicolette Londonderry, she had 2 children already with Alistair Londonderry. He was the Marquis of the day, and his sisters, who are better known than he was, are Lady Annabel Goldsmith and Lady Jane Rain, who's now married to one of the royal authors whose name I will avoid mentioning at this point. And yes, the whole thing caused a huge scandal. And Nico and Alistair got divorced. He then married Doreen Wells, the ballet dancer, and they had 2 lovely sons, one of whom is the present Marquis, and whose wife is very beautiful. And the other son has children and will, if he doesn't become the Marquis, one of his children will become the Marquis. So Nico then married Georgie Fame, whose real name is Powell, by the way, and she became known as Nico Powell. And it would have been in the early 2000s, after all her children had grown up, she declared there was no point in living. She had nothing left to live for, and jumped off Clifton Suspension Bridge. Very sad. By then she had 2 sons with Georgie Fame, and my understanding is that they're both very nice young men. So they are perfectly accepted everywhere by everyone. And her younger daughter, Cosima, is actually supposed to have not been Alistair's daughter, but was supposed to have been Robin Douglas Hume's daughter. Robin Douglas Hume was Lord Hume's son and Lord Hume's brother, two different Lord Humes. And he also went the way, and I know his son with Sandra Paul, who's now Lady Howard, Michael Howard, who was the head of the Conservative Party, his wife, and their son, Sholto Douglas Hume, is an old chum of mine. He used to do the motoring column, if I remember correctly, on Boardroom magazine while I did the social column. Really great guy. But Cosima came out with the fact that she wasn't really Alistair Londonderry's daughter. She was Robin Douglas Hume's daughter. But she is still a member of the family, and I know that she's been close over the decades with her aunt Annabelle Goldsmith. So I suppose you could say everybody handled the matter with as much delicacy, decorum, and humanity as it was possible to handle it. But it was a huge scandal at the time. But it's, as with all these things, yesterday's news wraps today's fish. In the aristocracy, there have been many, many scandals. And people just dust themselves off and continue along, trying to lead their lives with as much positivity as possible. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in on any subject, including Ascot, if you would like, but anything else. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless and goodbye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.